Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday night, and so that means it is time for our wind down Wednesday. So go ahead and grab something cozy, get comfortable on the couch, and we'll be back in about 30 seconds. All right, everybody, we are here. We are so excited. And joining me tonight, I have two of my work besties here. So Michele is joining us. Michele, why don't you share a quick little bio, maybe?
Hi guys, Michele Yanong, also multilingual education specialist at IRC. Most of my work focuses in the area of literacy instruction, so that's why tonight's topic is exciting for me, and in the specialized field of working with multilinguals, bilinguals. So I'm excited. I'm also a mama to a 9-year-old, and so it's a little ruckusy in my house here around 7 p.m. If you hear some shouting, it could be a video game disaster. I don't know what is going on in the other room.
I love it. I love it. Rachell, do you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, I am Rachell Plote, and also an education specialist with the IRC. And I, like Michele, I have 2 bonus kiddos, a teenager and a pre-teener, and who knows, they're supposed to be taking their showers and doing that stuff, but you never know what noises we're going to hear at nighttime. And that's kind of the fun of Wind Down Wednesday. We don't know.
We don't know. Anything goes tonight, y'all. Anything goes. Exactly. So we are super excited to be streaming on Facebook and Twitter. So if you are joining in and tuning in tonight, we'd love if you could do a quick intro in the comments. We are very glad to kind of hang out and unwind a little bit with you all tonight. But our topic is multilingual learners and literacy. So I am so excited to be kind of diving into this topic a little bit. We don't have to go super, super deep, but I know it is kind of a hotter topic. So we can just jump right in. And folks, if you're tuning in and if you have specific questions or even just thoughts, ideas around this topic, we'd love to hear it too from your perspective. So I don't know. Anyone want to kick us off with anything burning on your heart or anything like that?
Carly, I told you guys, I just zoomed back home. I was in a district today. And one of the, I think whenever we start to talk about multilingual learners, of course, reading and writing domains are going to come into focus as we think about how to best support them. And the most pressing question that I'm getting in districts right now is related to the science of reading and how phonics instruction, phonemic awareness, and that shift that we're seeing in school districts, how can we think about that through the lens of supporting multilingual learners? Is that focus on phonics instruction relevant, and at what point? So I'm hearing a lot of questions related to the science of reading.
Yeah. See, Michele, I feel like I have been hearing a lot about, we work so closely with so many multilingual educators that, I think they're hearing some of this push with the science of reading and the focus on phonics first, and they're feeling this pressure, but also maybe don't know the extent to advocate. Something doesn't seem to fit right as being necessarily appropriate for our multilingual learners, but they, it's hard to put our fingers on. And I think, you and I had chatted previously that we're trying to wrap our heads around all of this as it's coming out at the same time and synthesize it and come up with, ways that to also help our fellow educators advocate and share information with their administrators and their, other colleagues, because I feel like we're just in this really weird limbo stage. We just don't know what to do.
Yes.
well, science of reading kind of became synonymous. It's like shorthand now in the field, right, for early reading instruction that emphasizes really explicit, systematic teaching of phonics, the using letters and sounds, and phonemic awareness. So drawing attention to, in other words, the decoding element of reading, part of the decoding element of reading. And proponents of these practices have wanted educators to shift away from some of the guided reading practices that we've had that focus on only pairing students with text that is at their instructional level, right?
Mhm.
So thinking about proponents of the science of reading who say, wait, let's focus on decoding and get students moving into text that's above that narrow zone, are saying that that when we stick with only texts that are in your instructional reading level, done by a running record, and all the cueing systems and comprehension questions and things like that, that struggling readers who struggle with decoding just get kind of trapped into these simple, uninteresting texts. And I don't want multilingual students either to get stuck and trapped into uninteresting, boring, one single sentence text, especially not when they have thinking capability far beyond what they may be able to decode. So from that standpoint, I don't think it would be right of us to say, like, I'm on the side of science of reading, or I'm not. I'm on the side of no like, who would be on the side of limited phonics instruction? So from that point of view, I think as I guide teachers, I tend to think about a balance, and that it's really less important that I worry about where my own philosophies and instructional practices lie before I've really thought about the students that I have. Like, it's the students who I need to think about first, and what their needs are, and if their needs are being met, so that they are developing the ability to decode, but then also growing a love of reading, because we can't enjoy a good book if we can't decode it and lift the words off a page. We also can't enjoy a book if we're focused on, like, decoding nonsense words, let's say. So I don't know. Those are my initial thoughts.
Yes.
In no solid order.
No, that's good. The nonsense words really get me a lot. And again, this is kind of a hot topic. A lot of us are having these conversations in districts and schools. But, when we're talking about, like, making meaning, like, literacy is not separate from language learning, right? It is a domain of language, but it's also, like, we are doing both things at the same time with our students, right? With our multilingual students, we're developing language skills, and we're also developing, again, that love of reading, the skills of reading, but they're not, it's important. I love the way you said, Michele, like, to have a balance. Because, if someone is just handing us a package and saying, this is what we're doing now as a school, well, who developed the package?
Like, box kit, intervention kit, something like that.
The box kit drives me up a wall. Like, and inside the box kit, it always, and I've said this lots of times before on here, I hate the box kit for a gazillion reasons. Number one, it's usually designed by folks who don't look like my students and don't know anything about my students. But they always, like, they hand you a teacher's guide with a script, and they'll say, this is how to teach, right? This is exactly what you say, because you can't have, like, teacher autonomy or creativity or anything like that. Here's your script. Here's how to teach the lesson to everybody. And then in this small box over here, here's how to tweak it for your multilingual students. And it usually just says, like, add a visual or something awful.
Carly, you're spot on, because I was with some districts earlier this week, and we were diving into some phonics curriculum, and one of my comments was like, well, we need to pair visuals with this, because our students, like, they don't know what's a nonsense word and what's a real word if we're not giving them some context for it. Like Michele, you talk about those sentences and some of these decodable readers. I'm not saying I don't think kids should be decoding and working on those literacy skills, but they need to be decoding meaningful things that have words that like make sense. And then we can pair a visual with it to build that all together, because otherwise kids they can use their sound systems and decode all kinds of things. But if they can't attach meaning to it, we're wasting our time there.
Yes.
Yeah, back when you and I were doing Rachel, was that the bilingual director thing? Multilingual times? We were talking about literacy at something or other. Oh my gosh, I don't even remember what. But one of the things I was thinking about at the time, and I was researching a bit at the time because I was late to the party with understanding the argument happening. It was just reading wars all over again, really, is where it's at. But I was, thinking about at that time, the national I found evidence that the National Literacy Panel looked at, that a lot of what does work, looking at vocabulary instruction, phonics instruction, phonemic awareness, comprehension work. What else am I forgetting? Fluency. These things are also necessary components for multilingual students to experience in their literacy instruction. So some people have said, well, the National Literacy Panel said that these things are good also for multilinguals, but in the published materials, they also said, but the most effective instruction for English learners is really when we think about tailoring that literacy instruction, thinking about all of those things, but then tailoring that to what they are coming into us with, to their funds of knowledge, passions and interests, understanding their language background. And so should we include phonics, explicit phonics instruction? I think yes, but I think it has to be tied to the things that make it good for everyone else too, which is the ability to use spoken words, a robust vocabulary, and understanding of use of oracy through the spoken language. And so then when we tie what they're able to say and understand, explicitly pair that with simultaneous instruction, meaningful instruction. Maybe if you have the box kit, maybe you need to kind of pull it apart and pull out what would be meaningful and tied to the oracy and meaning. Because if we're sounding out words but they don't have meaning, while we're building skill in the moment, I don't know that it would be long lasting. Carly, you talked about the magic thing our brain has where it puts things into the digital trash can.
Yes. Yeah, totally. When things I always give the analogy too, when I'm sitting down in the living room and either my son or my husband turns on ESPN, my brain, it goes, hey, Carly, you're not interested in this. This doesn't hold any meaning or significance to you in your life. Just tune it out. And that's why it goes in one ear and right out the other.
Mm-hmm. That clear trash can, it's gone. No one, if anyone asks you to score that game, you're like, I don't have it anymore. It is in my digital brains. It's in my brain's trash can. And so we have to be careful that we tie the decoding of words, which they have to practice, absolutely, but to meaning in context.
Yes.
Yeah. And simultaneously still giving some really good exposure to rich text with strong, meaningful, experiences that are rooted in the stories, in literature and in our informational texts that we see there in nonfiction. They need all of that. We can't just pull that back and not get them engaged with those texts because we only want to focus on decoding, at their level. We still need to elevate that. And it's so essential for our language learners to then hear all of that in context
Mm-hmm.
and to experience how different writers present that information.
At the same time, really relevant for educators who are teaching English instruction to move away from a really traditional model where we're just working in the oral spectrum, of recognizing and learning everyday words. Sure, that can be done really meaningful in a newcomer survival English context, but then immediately beginning to pair the words that students do know and then breaking down the phonetics there, and sometimes the big thing for me that can be of value in some of those systematic sequential box kits is the competencies that teachers can gain about how to break down the English language into its phonetic parts. Knowing the 26 letters, we all got that from the ABC song at some point. So most of us are familiar there, but really there are 44 sounds in the English language. So breaking those down and explicitly teaching them to students is necessary. In addition to what might be in the box kit, we might need to also borrow from some of our speech language path work where we practice making sounds. And we absolutely do need that for multilingual students too. Absolutely. But void of understanding what they're saying, I just think it would definitely go into that digital trash can you speak of.
Absolutely.
Mental brain can.
Yes. And Amy Mosqueda is here. We love you, Amy. And she's saying, yes, it's all tied to meaning and context, right? Thank you for that. Thanks for tuning in. But yes, we really do. Like, we have to kind of prioritize that. And I love, again, Michele, when you're talking about that balance, right? Like, if we're not, and no one's gonna, like, if you're really unpacking all of these pieces, we can't say like all of this is bad or all of this is good or like whatever. We do need to make sure that we're talking about the kids who are in front of us, the kids that we are serving. Anytime someone's handing you something as human beings, as adults, right? Like, we should be critical thinkers and say, like, does this make sense? Why? Who is working on this? Why? What is their lens or perspective? And is that going to serve students who are in front of me?
And is the lesson fun? Can we throw that in there too? Because I think if I ask students about memorable, really fun lessons, they may not, refer back to some of their grammar instruction, things like that. So when we tie it to meaning and do like some embedded lessons during the fun, but then we do meaningful 2, 3, 4 minutes at breaking down the words and what they look like in print and helping students to make sense of the sounds. I think it can be valuable.
Absolutely. But I love how you said that too. It's like those little chunks. It's not like 30 minutes of grammar or like 30 minutes of worksheets or drill and kill. Sometimes I think, like, we think back to when we were kids and like what our experiences were. Like, I remember grammar packets and vocab packets. I remember copying, literally copying definitions from the dictionary onto a worksheet. Like, that was vocabulary when I was 8. But I love the way you said that, Michele, right? It's like that, it's the bite-sized chunks and making it fun and real and engaging.
Well, I think that's part of, the struggle right now is, this work from the National Reading Panel from the 90s is just getting traction again. And it's coming out from some of these publishers as well as selling kits with this stamp on it. And people don't necessarily know how to put that critical lens on there to say, is this appropriate for my students? Who is in front of me right now? And I think then some educators are questioning, like, how do I speak up and say this isn't working? This doesn't work for who the kids are in front of me when they're getting this extra push. And I sympathize with those teachers. And it's a hard place to be sometimes.
I talked with some teachers today about like stepping back to remember that any boxed kit that you have is a resource. And even if you are using that, pulling out the best gems from it, or teaching assessing that as a routine daily with students has its place, I believe. One teacher talked to me today about how she liked that the instruction asked students to tap out things with their fingers, to learn snap words, things like this. And I think that's great if we find strategies that students enjoy and that work well for them to acquire these skills. But we have to remember that we can give them that and still give them additional strategies for making sure that the word we've decoded makes sense. Strategies for we don't have to say never look at the pictures again because somebody said that was a bad idea. It's not. In fact, the pictures can give us more than just the meaning of how to decode, like more than just a check for if I read that word right. So I don't know, my 2 cents was that look at it as a resource, use it when it fits, and certainly I would not think about that being the best place to start with newcomers or students brand new to the language. So I definitely have been cautioning teachers about like, oh, I have these newcomers, now let's start with those 44 sounds. Before the sounds don't even, you sound like Charlie Brown's teacher over there. The sounds don't mean anything but sound until we have some ability to talk together a little bit. So, and then simultaneously matching that to the words and the sounds that they are learning, so they don't fall behind and end up, in 6th grade not knowing how to read the word what or this or and, right? We can't have that happen either for our students.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love how this conversation is really thinking about, our EL teachers, our EL leaders, because I think many of us, like we see our role as, we are instructors, absolutely. Like we are family liaisons, absolutely. We are change agents in our spaces, absolutely. All of these things. But we're also, right, like we are kind of instructional resources to our colleagues and to our teammates. And I know it can be a source of frustration when we're handed something that we don't necessarily agree with wholeheartedly. And I think, we kind of mentioned this earlier. And I know, Rachel, you said, like, I empathize with those teachers in that situation, because I think a lot of our role is that advocacy work. And it is like equipping ourselves with the right tools, the right kind of, resources that we can, again, like equipping ourselves with that so that we can bring that to other colleagues, other teammates, other, maybe folks who are making decisions, and just say, have we considered all of the lenses that really represent all of our stakeholders, all the folks we serve? Oh, and here's a Wind Down Wednesday special. My Great Dane.
To me, there's a danger that phonics would become another siloed subject, rather than an integrated, piece of work around meaning, getting to the good stuff, getting to the heart of a book, letting a book take you on an adventure or help you learn new information. I don't want phonics to be another siloed subject area, and I feel like our students learn it best in context, in the moments when it makes sense with their own vocabulary and what they're trying to read.
Yeah. Wait, Michele, I think I had shared with you that one graphic I was trying to get my head around, like, right? Like our kiddos they're at school and they're getting all these different siloed areas, and there's something going on in each different area. And so when we ask them to say, tell me about this, and they can't pull that because there's 15 different areas kind of working, and none of them connect to each other at all. And if they're a language learner who is struggling to process what's even going on that level, besides the content, they're probably picking up 20% of what's going on in the day. But if we can start to think about like how do all these things relate and connect a little bit, we can at least start to elevate some of that.
So we've been doing a lot of work around guided reading instruction. And in our work, we're mostly working with teachers who have a wide range of instructional levels. If we go back to that idea of pairing students with their instructional levels of text. So from the get-go, we have been talking about looking at literacy development, right? Thinking about buckets and pathways to literacy development rather than such a narrow instructional level, but really using books within a zone of proximal development with students. Because the span in the classroom is so large, you would have 20 different guided reading groups if you matched every student. And in some of that work, we've been talking a lot about how dangerous it is to keep students stuck in those decodable readers. So from that standpoint, I agree that there are many ways to read books, and that students should absolutely have choice and agency to find different books in the classroom library that are in their zone of readability or outside and in their sort of interest or something that you want to browse through or just hold in their hands. So that was something I have agreed with when I've been reading materials from proponents of the science of reading, because there is a danger in staying in a decodable reader as your whole reading experience. But I also think there's a danger in experiencing school where you just listen to other people read the books to you, and you work on your comprehension by just listening, to other people read the books to you without really ever having a low-level book in your hand that is decodable for you. So in that case, we can't ignore one or the other. We have to work on phonics at the same time allowing students to get in their hands books that inspire them.
Yes, that's huge. That's like we always talk about, like, building, that love of reading, that lifelong love of reading. And also kind of affirming our own identities as languagers and how we language in different spaces and how we show up as readers, writers, listeners, and speakers in English or an additional language. And I think another piece of all of this is too, there's just so much in US schools that is just based on this monolingual framework because many of these decision makers are monolingual and they grew up monolingual and they teach in monolingual settings, and it's very much a kind of a limited frame of reference. And so if we can continue to kind of share our lenses with our colleagues and teammates and leaders and all of those things, we do need, just like we stretch our students' language, we need to stretch, the perspectives of those we serve alongside, because it's not just, like we always say, it's not just my multilingual students, it's our multilingual students. We are a multilingual school. We are a multilingual district, a multilingual community, all of that.
Spot on, Carly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, y'all. It is already 7:31.
Well, we could probably keep going on about this for hours as we ebb and flow through things, but
yes.
I know. I just started my thinking. I'm a verbal thinker, so I don't know what I said in the session, but I was just thinking aloud.
Well, that is Michele. I love there's a Venn diagram kind of thing where it talks about oracy being like this convergence where we learn to talk and learning through talk, right? And I do so much learning through talking with you as my colleagues, through just processing information. And I just can't imagine our students not having those types of opportunities to figure things out and navigate it by talking.
It's huge. That's huge.
Maybe that's probably why I hated writing my blog. I wrote 3 posts and I was I can't figure this out in typing. It's just not working for me.
I love it. I love the power of the dialogue. So thank you both so much for joining me this evening. And folks, we hope, again, if you're either tuning in live now with us or you're catching the replay, we would love to hear your thoughts and comments and ideas on this topic and anything and everything that's connected to serving multilingual students. Just a quick note, programming note, next week there will be no Wind Down Wednesday because me voy de vacaciones. I'm going to be on vacation, so I will not be here. But sending you all
break.
Love. Yes. Hopefully y'all have spring break on the horizon in your settings. But Michele and Rachell, thank you both so much for tuning in and joining in.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes. All right, y'all. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.